Let's start with Mark Robinson. Can we start with Mark Robinson? So for those of you who don't know, Donald Trump chose Mark Robinson to be the Republican candidate for governor in North Carolina. Now, he was lieutenant governor previously, but there was a race where him and a more moderate option was trying to vie for the seat, and Trump leaned on the Mark Robinson side of the ticket, getting him nominated. Now, within a Republican primary, getting the more radical guy nominated is not necessarily that difficult. You have to try to appeal to the people who are the rank and file of the party that already agree with you, so you can just try to advocate for these ideas most fervently, take the most fervent positions, maybe take the most radical positions to prove your loyalty to these positions, and therefore try to gain the support of those people. And for those who don't want the moderation, which I think the MAGA movement is nothing representing moderation, are not going to go for the moderate option, especially if Trump puts his finger on the scale. And so basically, Mark Robinson became the nominee. The problem is, and this is before even the new scandal, Mark Robinson has said a lot of crazy stuff, like kind of defining LGBT people generally as the enemy, and some pretty crazy stuff. We'll go through a few of these quickly, but I want to tell you guys that Donald Trump referred to this man as Martin Luther King on steroids. You know what? Let's just go to his Mark Robinson Wikipedia page. This is the easiest. Okay, this is the easiest. And let's just go to scandals. This is easy. Political views and remarks. Abortion. In the 80s, Robinson paid for his girlfriend to have an abortion and later married his girlfriend. According to CNN, he discussed a celebrity abortion on an online porn forum in 2010, stating, "I don't care, I just want to see the sex tape." Okay, we're going to get into that in a second. In 2018, he wrote that abortion was genocide and murder, which I guess would make him a genocider and a murderer. Anyway, anti-Semitic remarks. Robinson's past anti-Semitic comments have drawn scrutiny and condemnation. Prior to running for lieutenant governor, he frequently made Facebook posts that invoked anti-Semitic stereotypes and downplaying the harms of Nazism. He claimed that the movie Black Panther was created by, and I quote, "an agnostic Jew and put to film by satanic Marxists. That was, and I quote, only created to pull the shekels," in reference to, you know, the Israeli currency, "out of the Schwarz's pockets," using a Yiddish slur for black people. Anyway, a lot more stuff on the Jews. Then you get into Holocaust denial. Then you get into his comments about the Pulse nightclub shooting, writing in response to a bunch of gays being killed in a bar, that homosexuality is still an abomination and sin, and I will not join in celebrating gay pride. He wrote that transgenderism and homosexuality, that, and I quote about them, "there's no reason anyone in America should be telling any child about transgenderism, homosexuality, or any of that filth. And yes, I call it filth. And you don't like that I call it filth, come see me and I'll explain it to you." In the same speech, he called for an end to the separation of church and state and public schools. Now, these are just a few of the things. We're not even getting into his stuff about women, feminism, birth control. No, we're not going to get into any of that. Point is, the guy was seen as a little bit of a wild card even before the recent CNN report, and these things were seen even by generally within the Republican Party as liabilities that could sink his campaign. But Trump was behind him. Nobody wanted to fight Trump and put their careers on the line. Mark Robinson got the nomination, and the hope was that they'd be able to just glide to victory just enough to get him over the top so they can get the North Carolina governorship red. Problem is that he hasn't really had his numbers all that up. He hasn't really been performing all that terribly well. And now with this recent support report coming out, his polling numbers is worse than ever. His fundraising is worse than ever. And his staff is actively resigning. So what's causing this exodus after so many crazy statements? Well, let's just say that he looks like the biggest hypocrite on the planet. Definitely when you see how much he's defined women as like sexually deviant and et cetera, et cetera. Let me just read you the headline here. "I'm a black Nazi. North Carolina GOP nominee for governor made dozens of disturbing comments on a pornography forum." Now, before we read these messages, let me give you a disclaimer that Mark Robinson denies that the messages we are about to read are his own. But I do want to put out there that the account is registered in his name. These posts were made 14 something years ago. So you'd have to be pretty crazy to organize this in advance. And after it was brought to Mark Robinson's attention, the account was deleted within 24 hours after being inactive for years. Unless this guy just happened to have the same name, be from the same area, North Carolina, which has already been proven that the person who was making these posts are from the same area, North Carolina, that he was, and for some reason wanted it deleted at the same time that would have been most convenient for Mark Robinson, as it gets brought up for the first time and 14 years after it being posted. Look, the evidence is not good. He continues to deny it. But when this is a response from JD Vance, it's hard to believe that any of them even buy it. Listen to this when he's asked about this.
Do you believe him that those were not his posts?
I don't not believe him. I don't believe him. I just think that you have to let these things sometimes play out in the court of public opinion.
Not exactly a ringing endorsement, is it? Well, let's read some of these posts then, shall we? Mark Robinson, the controversial and socially conservative Republican nominee for governor of North Carolina, made a series of inflammatory comments on a pornography website message board more than a decade ago, in which he referred to himself as a black Nazi. Number one, he went to a forum website. This is not him in the comments of the hub, and he's just gotten too excited while watching a video or whatever. He went off to this own website called, I believe, Nude Africa. You look it up if you want. And then started to have back and forth dialogue about the material. So he went out of his way so he could discuss said material with others. And while doing that, while touching his knob and going to town and typing on the forums, he decided he wanted to talk about his love for Nazism. Okay. Oh, and he also expressed his support for reinstating slavery. Just a slight one I guess I should throw out there a little bit. Despite a recent history of anti-transgender rhetoric, Robinson said he enjoyed watching transgender you-know-what. A review of archived messages found in which he also referred to himself as a quote-unquote pervert. The comments, which Robinson denies making, predate his entry into politics.
I'm mortified anyone would slander Clayton Bigsby in this way.
I can't believe it. I can't at all. Thank you for the money, buddy. I appreciate it. In current stint as North Carolina's lieutenant governor. They were made, by the way, while North Carolina can try to stop this guy from becoming governor, he's already lieutenant governor, so the stink's already there. They were made under the username that CNN was able to identify as Robinson by matching a litany of biographical details and a shared email address. So the person would also have to have had access to his email address 14 years ago. Very, very unfortunate. Many of Robinson's comments were gratuitously sexual and lewd in nature. They were made, on a forum like that, who would have thought? They were made between 2008 and 2012 on Nude Africa, a website that includes a message board. The comments were made under the username Mini Solder, a moniker for Robinson's used frequently, a moniker that he used frequently online. Robinson listed his full name on his profile for Nude Africa, so it has the moniker he uses, and he has his full name on it. Brilliant. And his email address. Oh, God, he's so smart. As well as an email address he used on numerous websites across the internet for decades. CNN is reporting only a small portion of Robinson comments on the website given their graphic nature, meaning you could go, before it was deleted, get a lot more. Maybe Internet Archive can help with that. Many of Robinson's comments on Nude Africa stand in contrast to his public stance on issues such as abortion and transgender rights. Publicly, Robinson has fiercely argued that people should use bathrooms only that correspond to the gender they were assigned at birth. He also said transgender women should be arrested for using women's restrooms. If you're a man on a Friday night and all of a sudden Saturday you feel like a woman and you want to go into a woman's bathroom in the mall, you'll be arrested, or whatever we got to do to you, he said at a campaign rally. We're going to protect our women. Yet privately, under the username Minsona on Nude Africa, he graphically described his own sexual arousal as an adult from the memory of secretly peeping on women in a public gym I'm sorry. I read a few of these in advance. I didn't read this one. As an adult from the memory of secretly peeping on women in a public gym showers as a 14-year-old, Robinson recounted the story as a memory he said he still fantasizes about. You couldn't torture this out of most people. I came to a spot that was a dead end, but had two big vent covers. It was just so happened it overlooked the showers. I sat there for about an hour and watched as several girls came forward and showered. I wasn't peeping. I went peeping again the next morning, but after that I went back. The ladder was locked. So those 2 times were the only times I got to do it. Memories. In other comments on the website, he discussed his affinity for transgender images of content. I like watching T-girl prawn. That's effing hot. It takes the man out while leaving the man in. And yeah, I'm a perv too. He's a chaser. I'm so I don't know. I don't have any witty commentary to add here. I feel like I'm diluting it by talking. I'm just gonna keep reading. This is not us. These are not our words. Is this not anything that is characteristic of me? Robinson said. Presenting with the litany of evidence connecting him with the username on Nude Africa, he responded, I'm not going to get into the minutia of how someone manufactured this, these salacious tabloid lies. So he doesn't want to talk about any of the details connecting him to it. He's just calling it all lies. So he's not really fighting back against it very effectively. CNN reached out to Robinson Tuesday morning with evidence connecting him to the comments on Nude Africa. It took his campaign 2 days to respond and issue a denial. During his interview with CNN, man, what I would pay to be a fly on the wall during those days. During his interview with CNN, he repeatedly said the issues that faced North Carolinians were more important than what he called tabloid trash. And he steered the conversation towards attacking his opponent in the race, Democrat Josh Stein, the state's attorney general. We are not getting out of this race. There are people who are counting on us to win the race, Robinson said. A history of controversial statements. Okay, and a bunch of this is just like crazy stuff he said before. And look, you can look here. It connects him to Greensboro, North Carolina. Connects him Midsummer to Greensboro. He's from Greensboro. It's by his name. It's by his email. It's the same age. This is him. This is him. This is him. This is him. There's no denying it. I do not think you should elect a black Nazi to be the governor of North Carolina. I do not believe you should elect a guy claiming to be a black Nazi to be a governor of North Carolina. I do not believe you should be electing a guy who's talking about reinstating slavery. I don't think you should be... And this is... We're not even talking about the crazy stuff he said in public, on camera, that we already knew about. This is just a whole other level. And let me just throw out there that I am not the only person who thinks this is too much. Several senior campaign officials for his campaign have stepped down and are bailing as we speak. They are jumping ship. They are getting out of there. They have no interest in drowning with the captain. Several top operatives on the Republican Mark Robinson's campaign for North Carolina governor have stepped down just days after a CNN report uncovered inflammatory comments the candidate made on a website. Robinson's campaign announced Sunday evening that the general consulate and the senior advisor, Conrad Progotsky III, campaign manager, Chris Rodriguez, the campaign manager, the finance director, Heather Willer, and a deputy campaign manager, Jason Redsky, the person they would replace him with, have all stepped down from the campaign. My goodness. But let me just throw out there that this ain't it either. Because on top of the fact that people are stepping down, and you should expect more campaign officials to step down, even though the top ranking ones have already all jumped. On top of that, the Republican Governors Association, which is trying to get Republican governors elected in states across the country, has abandoned ship as well. Their job is to help get people like Mark Robinson elected, the guy who's Trump endorsed. And they have said that their ads expire basically today for him in North Carolina, and they have no new plans to buy new ads, meaning that they're tapping out of buying ad space in North Carolina and are probably going to use those resources on races that are actually slightly winnable. And let me tell you, putting aside the fact that Mark Robinson's chances are dead, okay? He is not going to be the next governor of North Carolina. The next governor of North Carolina is going to be a Democrat. Democrats still need to turn out. I think North Carolina wants to give him the most sound defeat possible so they do not embarrass their state. But I do not think this guy has a chance of winning. His own campaign doesn't think he has a chance of winning. The Republican National Governors Association doesn't think there's a chance of winning. J.D. Vance, one of the least liked politicians in the country, one of the least liked vice presidential nominee that I could ever think of, he is distancing himself from him. If you're politically toxic to J.D. Vance, you're politically toxic to everyone. He is done. A Democrat is going to be Josh Stein, presumably, the next governor of North Carolina. The question is now not whether Democrats are going to win the governorship of North Carolina. The question is now whether Democrats can transfer Donald Trump's endorsement and elevation of Mark Robinson into an electoral loss for Trump in North Carolina as well. See, the reason why Mark Robinson is the nominee for the Republicans in North Carolina is because of Donald Trump. It's the same reason that Doc Hollywood Dr. Oz, who lost to John Fetterman after Fetterman had a stroke on the campaign trail, he was the nominee. It was because Trump benefited Mehmet Oz over the more moderate candidate during that close primary race. And then John Fetterman won the general. And now Mark Robinson backs another radical, and boom, he's going to lose, and a Democrat's going to win the general. And these are just a few examples. We could push to Carrie Lake before, and it might now be, if Carrie Lake loses again, Carrie Lake again. People that Donald Trump is jumping out, trying to give them political cover, push them forward because of their loyalty to him, but they're just unelectable. They're radical, they're loyal, but they are unelectable. And if the Democrats can connect Mark Robinson's disgustingness to Donald Trump, that could be very useful. So I would hope if I was Donald Trump, I wouldn't have a lot of statements out there of me saying how wonderful Mark Robinson is, since I don't want to be associated with all this nonsense, and I don't want to remind people that the reason he's the nominee in the first place is because of Donald Trump. But the Harris campaign wants you to remember this. Listen to this.
And he's been an unbelievable Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson.
For me, there is no compromise on abortion.
I think you're better than Martin Luther King.
We could pass a bill saying you can't have an abortion in North Carolina for any reason.
Abortion in this country, it's about killing a child because you aren't responsible enough to keep your skirt down.
I've been with him a lot.
That was the stuff that was publicly available before the recent CNN break.
I've gotten to know him, and he's outstanding.
Donald Trump and Mark Robinson. They're both wrong for North Carolina.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So what the Democrats are trying to do, what the Harris-Walz ticket is trying to do, is transfer that hatred of Robinson, this disgusting scandal, over to Trump, specifically in this state, making North Carolina think, man, if I don't want to have more Mark Robinson candidates...
This chat gives Robinson zero credit. He hasn't even pulled out the calipers yet.
Thank you for the $5, Grassroots. If you don't want more candidates like Mark Robinson running for office, and you want somebody who's actually slightly sensible, someone who might actually be able to do the job, and is not too off the deep end, then Trump might need to lose so the party can grow beyond the cult. And I wanted to point out that I am not the first person to say that. This isn't like innovating thing. As long as Donald Trump is the head of the party, he's going to continue to pick loyalty over electability, just like he did with JD, just like he did with Carrie Lake, just like he did with Mehmet Oz, and just like he did with Mark Robinson.
This was predictable. Mark Robinson's tenure in public life has shown erratic, sometimes highly offensive statements over and over again, and Donald Trump supported him and endorsed him. In fact, called him better than Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King Jr. on steroids.
That's right.
Right? So this was predictable, and this is the problem for us Republicans. As long as Donald Trump is your recruiting agent for candidates in swing states, we're going to continue to get our rear ends handed to us. And Mark Robinson is not going to win this race, can't win this race.
He's about 10, 12 points behind
right.
now.
And he's running against, by the way, a very formidable candidate.
He was that much behind before the CNN drop. Imagine where he's at now, man.
Yeah,
in the Attorney General, Josh Stein.
Right.
So the fact is this was going to be a tough race no matter what. And the problem for them now, George, is how much will it affect the top of the ticket?
And I want to
Thank God he's that incompetent, that Trump. Could you imagine if he picked smarter political operators? Oof. Okay, we got more stuff to cover, more stuff to cover, more stuff to cover.